name on the book and have the book finally come out?
It felt pretty good. You know, we've been working on it for a few years, and you know, the guy did some research, did his research on it, and so it's not something he just threw together. And I gave him a lot of stories, and he kind of weeded them out and put some in and didn't put some in. So, but he took his time, and you know, so far it's really good. I did a radio show last night with Randy Gordon and Jerry Cooney. And Randy Gordon worked for Ring Magazine, and used to be the commissioner of New York, and they both love it. And yeah, so it was nice to get a little airtime with Jerry, and you know, he's trying to convince me to be buddies with Vinnie, and I said, nah, it ain't happening. He goes, well, I'm friends with Larry Holmes. I said, well, that's you and Larry. I said, you know, I don't have anything good to say about Vinnie, and we don't like each other, so that's not happening in this lifetime.
Vinnie Pazienza, why is it so sour with him?
Well, he knows that I thumped him for 3 fights, and you know, the third fight he came out and ran like Carl Lewis, and you know, he just, me and him don't like each other. There's a lot of bad blood, and you know, we had an agreement. The agreement was I was the only one out of Hector. It was me, Camacho, and Edwin Rosario were the champions. I was IBF, Camacho's WBC, Rosario's WBA, and Vinnie, we had an agreement that he'd come to Washington and fight me, or fight me in Vegas. Well, of course, he backed out, and you know, I lost some respect for him, and you know, kind of made me mad. But you know, they said, well, you know, it's Atlantic City, and I go, well, what's the difference? 100 miles and 10,000 Dagos. You know, I mean, you know, it's pretty much the same as fighting in Providence. So I lost a lot of respect for him, and you know, him not living up to his word and coming here or coming to Vegas and fight me. So you know, from there it's just you know, boiled over to where we don't like each other.
Have you spoken to him at all since you fought last?
No, I know that he was calling me a douchebag in the book, so.
So that's another thing I want to ask you is, were you surprised at how many guys contributed to the book and some of your former opponents that talked about you in this book?
Yeah, it was. You know, everybody pretty much that he contacted, you know, gave him some, you know, gave him some tip on it, and I think everybody but one guy, and you know, yeah, I was really surprised in that, but you know, he's has a way of coaxing it out of him, and I was surprised at some of the things that the guy said in there, and I think Chavez is the only one that really didn't have anything to say. You know, him and Camacho, and of course Camacho's dad. So, you know, but yeah, I was pleasantly surprised at some of the nice things that some of those guys had to say about me.
But were you surprised at any nasty things that someone said about you?
No.
What were some of the things that caught your eye?
You know, the fact that you know, Chavez, you know, he just wanted to beat me up real bad from the things that I said. But, like, you know, like I told the sports reporters down there, a lot of that stuff I didn't say. It was Don King trying to sell tickets. You know, I mean, if he can get an extra, you know, 5 pesos for the ticket, you know, I mean, that's one more person that he's going to get in. And, you know, and he was looking to set the record for the biggest crowd, and he did. You know, but he said a lot of things that I didn't say, and I just told him, Don, you know, we got people giving me death threats, and, you know, I'm coming after you, the first one I'm going to get. So you need to quit telling them lies and stuff, and telling them that I'm saying this and saying that when I'm not. So.
Yeah, but you saying that he beat up a bunch of Tijuana taxi drivers,
yeah,
well,
that was my line. You know, they were asking me, well, aren't you scared to death? And I said, no, he's a man like me, and you know, he gets dressed one leg at a time. And so I said, you know, the way I look at it is his record's pumped up with a bunch of Tijuana cab drivers, and I got a lot of play, and kind of pissed him off, but you know, it was true. So, you know, I mean, but, you know, like I said after the fight, they must have been tough cab drivers. So, You know, I mean, I'll give him credit. You know, I mean, you know, I always try to shake guys' hands after the fight because, you know, you respect them. And, you know, anybody that's got the balls to get in there and climb through them ropes and fight, you know, I respect. So, you know, I always tried to shake hands with them or, you know, acknowledge that, you know, they did a good job.
Yeah. With other comments in the book, Vinnie calls you a douchebag. Well, tell me a little bit more about what he said about you.
Well, he's just, you know, he's not had anything good to say about me, but, you know, I wasn't surprised by that, but, you know, that just goes back to, you know, '88 when, you know, he wouldn't live up to his agreement to fight me here in Washington or in Vegas, you know, because I went to Providence to fight him, and, you know, he backed out, and so I lost a lot of respect for him. And, you know, you need to, you know, you say something, you need to live up to your word and be a man about it.
But you can't expect all these guys that talked in this book to say nice things about you, right? Because doesn't it help your book if they say controversial things?
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, I wasn't always the nicest guy, and it didn't make, you know, make a lot of friends. I wasn't in it to make friends. I was in it to win. You know, I was in it to, you know, hurt them instead of them hurting me. So it's a rough game. I mean, not, you know, to make it as far as I made it, not a lot of guys do that. So, you know, you have to, you know, you have to be the butthole sometimes. And I wasn't the most friendly guy. You know, it was, you know, coming up on fight time, and I was training, and so I was going without a lot of stuff. I was starving myself to make weight, and, you know, so you get a little grouchy, you know. I mean, you tend to be a little ornery and, you know, say things that you don't always mean, but, you know, I was always a man of my word, and if I'm going to say it, I'll back it up, and, you know, I'll admit to saying it. But, you know, that didn't surprise me what Vinnie said, and, you know, he's the only one that really badmouthed me, but, you know, and Chavez, he didn't have any good things to say about me either, but, you know, 2 out of 30 guys ain't bad, you know.
Do you remember anything Chavez said about you in this book?
Oh, yeah, he was saying he wanted to hurt me real bad, and he was going to punish me, and, yeah, so he was, you know, he was out for blood, you know, and I understood that, but, you know, so was I, and, but that was the only fight that I ever been hit, and I didn't have any legs. You know, I didn't train for that fight very much, and you know, I was going through an ugly divorce, and you know, it was my childhood sweetheart, and it just, my mind wasn't where it needed to be for a big fight like that. You know, and I mean, you know, you got to be 110%, or else, you know, it's going to show.
Yeah, I remember you and I talking about that was a tough time in your life. When you pick that book up, Greg, and you look at it, I put it in your hands, man. I mean, like, look at that book. That's a story about your life, and it finally has come out. They've been working on this book for 3 years, and you look at that, and you see that young guy on the cover. What do you think about it?
Well, just all the hard work that went into it, and you know, I mean, the guy did a good job on it. He did his research on it, and you know, he took his time, so he didn't want to rush it and put it out right away. So he got a lot of, you know, a lot of homework he did on it, and he did his research, and he contacted, I think there was only one person that wouldn't talk to him.
Tell people about your book, like, because, you know, where does it start in your tough man days? Does it start when you were 5? Like, where does it start? Of course, it obviously goes to your titles, but.
It starts, you know, it starts when I was 5 years old, and, you know, my boxing coach, Jimmy Montgomery, and Art Grip. So my dad used to get my head shaved every week, whether I needed it or not. And the guy that was the barber, Jimmy Montgomery, was starting a boxing gym with the Auburn Elks, and was asking my dad if I'd be interested in fighting. And I'd been being picked on a lot because I was a real small kid, and so my dad asked me, and I said, sure, I'd like to try that. So I went down, and you know, I tried it and liked it right away. So it was about 6 months, I guess, before these bullies stopped picking on me, and as soon as they find out that I was fighting, they didn't want to, you know, fight with me anymore because I was thumping them. So,
And that all started at the Auburn Elks Club? That's
Yeah.
where your boxing career started?
Yeah, Auburn Elks, a little gym, a little old, it was an old gas station that used to be there, and the Elks gave him the spot, and you know, he got the equipment, and Jimmy used to box in the Navy, and so he had some experience, and you know, and we were one of the better teams in the, you know, in the Northwest. We competed with the best of them, and you know, that's including the Tacoma Boys Club, who have, you know, Ray Seals, Lockridge, Bumpus, you know. So you know, we had a good trainer. We had a good coach that you know, that taught us the right way from the start. And when you're able to, you know, be shown the right way from the start, you can start trying to perfect it. And you know, Jimmy, he just was a good coach that knew a lot. So you know, that little gym in Auburn ended up being a, you know, nationally recognized gym in, you know, in the country. So we were holding our own.
Well, you progressed there, and then you stopped fighting at some point, right?
Yeah, I fought.
And why did you get back? Why did you stop? Why did you get back into it?
Well, I stopped fighting when I was 15, because I started when I was 5, and I fought 10 years, and then I was just kind of getting burned out on it, and you know, I quit fighting from the time I was 15 to the time I was 20, and my ex-wife, Karen, you know, I'd see Lockridge and Bumpus and on TV, and when they were fighting for main events, and you know, saying, "Oh, I used to fight those guys," you know, blah blah blah, and she just kept saying, "Well, you're not going to be happy till you get back in it. Just go to the gym and see what you can do." So I did, and kind of picked right back up where I left off, and it was fun again. You know, I mean, when I quit when I was 15, it wasn't much fun anymore. And so I noticed that when I picked it back up when I was 20, it was a lot of fun again, and so you know, I really put my heart into it again.
So you did not fight from 15 years old to 20 years old?
Yeah.
So you took 5 years off of the sport?
Yeah, I took 5 years off, and by the time, you know, within those 10 years, from the time I was 5 to 15, I had you know, 300 fights. You know, this is back in the day when, you know, you go to a tournament and, you know, you'd fight 3 times on Saturday to get to the finals on Sunday. You know, and nowadays you can't do that. Nowadays you can only fight once every 24 hours. So, you know, you could compile a pretty good record, you know, pretty big record in a short amount of time. And so, yeah, I had, you know, close to 300 fights in that 10 years, and I only lost 20 of them, and you know, I knew I was a good fighter, but you know, it's something you have to, you know, you have to work on every day. You have to perfect your craft, and you know, it's when you're taught the right way from the start, it makes it easier. And Jim Montgomery was definitely one of the smartest guys I ever met.
Is he in a book?
Yeah, Jimmy's in the book. In fact, we just gave him a copy this week, and you know, he's been dealt a tough hand. Jimmy's daughter, who's my age, Carrie, and his wife both have Alzheimer's, and so he's taking care of both of them now. And yeah, he's a hell of a man. You know, I call him Dad because you know, he was more of my dad than my real dad, and my dad wasn't around much. And you know, and if it wasn't for Jimmy and Art, you know, I doubt that I would have been able to fight later on in life, because I wouldn't have had the experience that I had, because, you know, Jim would pay my way. You know, when we left town, go out of town to the tournaments and stuff, Jimmy would pay, you know, for me to eat, and and pay for the hotel rooms and stuff. So, you know, if it wasn't for Jim Montgomery, then I wouldn't have been able to develop my skills, and you know, that's why I chose to bring him along for the ride when I turned pro.
Your dad recently passed. How did that affect you, and the fact that maybe you just wish you would have been able to live long enough to read about this book?
Yeah, you know, he was out of my life for a long time. I mean, he left when I was about 9 years old and moved to California and become a lawyer. and raised another family. You know, he had another family. He had a couple girls that he had from another marriage, and so I didn't see him for 10 years or so, and then I seen him up here, and I think it was 1980. Karen was pregnant with Jasmine, and he was telling me that he didn't feel comfortable being a grandfather. He was a little too young, and I just told him, screw you, and I didn't talk to him again for 5 years, I think it was, and he showed up one morning at the weigh-ins in Vegas, and I had a lot of fans coming up, hey Greg, what's going on, but I reckon, he came up to me, and hey Greg, I recognized him because of his nose, he has a big nose, and I didn't get that nose, thank you, but, my brother kind of got it, and, so I recognized him. I go, Lee? He goes, yeah, and I go, hey, we need to talk, and so we sat down and had breakfast and talked, and I just told him, what you said to me really hurt me. I hadn't seen you in 10 years, and then you tell me you're too young to be a grandpa, and my daughter by then was like, 6 years old, and and I just told him, you do that again, and we're done, and I'm washing my hands with you, and we won't talk again. But he wasn't in my life for a long time. In the last 5-6 years, he was, I think he's seen his mortality, and he was trying to make up for all the bad things he did as a father and or not doing as a father, and so we got to be pretty close, and it hurt when he passed. I was hoping that he would have lived long enough to read the book, because I know that he was I didn't know this until I read the book, that he was pretty well scared to death when I fought Chris Calvin, because Chris Calvin he made he just got done thumping Brett Summers, and and knocked him down like 7 times, and the guy before that he killed, Sean Thomas, I think his name was, and so he was a hard puncher, and my dad was really worried about that, and so he told Anthony, the author of the book, that he was really scared for me going into that fight, and he was worried that I was gonna turn to have the same fate happen to me as Sean, and the guy punched hard, so. I learned some things in that book that I didn't really know about my dad, and it's unfortunate he didn't live to read it.
But you get to read some comments from your dad in the book.
Yeah, I've read some of the stuff that I never knew, that he was worried about me fighting Chris Calvin, and he had seen Calvin fight. So.
What do you remember about the Chris Calvin fight? Other than the fact that he punched hard, how did it go for you?
Well, I remember in the first round, it was the first time that I ever got hit hard enough to where I blacked out. I mean, I hit me with a right hand, and I remember everything turned black, and my body was tingling. It was kind of numb, but I remember I got hit with a right hand, and I better duck down because that left hook was coming and it was going to finish me. So on the tape, it shows me just bending under that left hook, and I was able to grab a hold of him. The ref broke us, and I kind of shook it off and came back with my own 1-2 at the end of the round, and he knew he was in a fight then. But yeah, that guy was a hard puncher. I think he was 17-2 with 16 KOs, and he had fought Brett Summers a couple fights before that, and I think Brett was doing a commercial for Dunkin' Yo-Yo because he was down as much as he was up, and he kept getting knocked down, and I knew that he punched hard, so I couldn't take too many of those big shots, and when he hit me in that first round and I blacked out, that was the first time that ever happened to me, and so I knew I was in a fight then.
When you blacked out, were you out on your feet?
Yeah, I was out on my feet, but I was still standing, but my whole body was tingling, and I couldn't see anything, but I could hear the crowd, and I knew I got hit with the right hand, so I had to bend into him and tie him up, and on the tape you see him missing the left hook, and that probably would have finished me off. So
when was the last time you watched that fight?
It's in my mind. It's in my camera eye of my mind, so I know everything that happened with it. So
did you win the fight?
Yeah, knocked him out in the 6th round, I believe.
So you came back from being blacked out on your feet, And you came back and won the fight with a knockout in the 6th round.
Yeah, and that was the third fight of some fights that I was supposed to lose. They set me up with Freddie Roach, who he was 38-8. I was, I think, 10-0. And Freddie's talking about, he had more knockouts than I had fights, so this should be easy. But he knew it wasn't going to be because we had sparred in Vegas at Johnny Taco's. And, I was just so much stronger than him. And, so, when we fought, I knew that, I was just going to bull him and, pressure him, because pressure kills people, they can't deal with it. And, so I beat him, and he was kind of a hometown local guy in Vegas. And, and then I fought Chris Calvin, and I fought Edwin Corrette. I had, 5-6 fights that they thought I was going to lose, and Charlie White Lightning Brown. Knocked him out in 30 seconds.
Was that the quickest knockout you've ever had?
Yeah. Actually, it was like in 15 seconds, but it took him 10 seconds to count him out. So.
What was his name?
Charlie White Lightning Brown. And
White Lightning.
Yeah, he was 29-2, and he'd only lost to Harry Arroyo, who was IBF champion at the time, and one other guy. So he could fight. And but yeah, they set me up with 4 guys in a row that I was supposed to lose, and then after I knocked all 4 of them out, they figured, man, this guy can maybe fight.
Yeah.
And everybody was going, well, where's Auburn, Washington?
Yeah, you put him on a map a bit there, huh?
Yeah, I told him, well, it's a little town between Seattle and Tacoma. So.
Well, tell me, when were the tough man years?
Tough man years were 80 to 82 when I moved to Alaska with my sister and brother-in-law.
How old were you?
I was 20. I turned 21 on the Alcan Highway. So it was in 81.
So you were just getting back into fighting?
Yeah, I was just getting back into it, and I was fighting local guys, and they didn't like me in Alaska because I was beating up all the local guys, and I was from the lower 48, and they didn't really like that new guy coming in from out of town, thumping the white and local guys, and so yeah, I mean, it was just one of those things where I had to use strategy to go out and beat these guys, because most of them weren't real skilled, but they were just strong and they're ready to fight. And so
bigger than you, right?
Oh yeah, the smallest guy I fought was 10 pounds heavier than me, but most of the guys were 30, 40, 50 pounds heavier than me. And the biggest guy I fought was the Yukon Crusher. And he was like 225 pounds when I was 130. So yeah, I was always giving away weight and height, but I had to use my experience and go out there and set a game plan up. So then I had a strategy to go out and tire them down. And most of them, I just go out there and give them the old rope-a-dope and let them tire themselves out in the first round. And by the second round, they're tired, and all they could do is let me beat them up or quit.
Tell me about your favorite fight. There must be a favorite fight out there for you, that maybe not one that you won a title, but what was your favorite?
Well, I'd have to say my favorite fight would probably be the Camacho fight. The first one where, I was a 4-1 underdog, and they didn't, they were talking about how he was getting ready to fight Chavez, and it was going to be the battle of the undefeateds, because Chavez was like 84-0, and Camacho, I think, was like 38-0, and so they were setting me up to get beat by Camacho, and but I knew Hector from when I lived in Alaska. We sparred up there because he came up there and was doing a promotional thing for his fight. He was getting ready to fight in Alaska, and and they said, "Oh, we got some sparring for you. He's Alaska lightweight champion." And he probably thought I was some hillbilly from Alaska, and so he came up and tried to knock me out in the sparring session, and I started dropping bombs back on him, and and so I bloodied his mouth and his nose, and he kind of knew that he was in a tough fight. So I'd have to say that fight, because of the fact that everybody pretty much picked me to lose.
And you won the fight. Tell us how you won the fight, and And what title was that?
Well, I won that fight because I knew Hector only liked to fight, a minute and a half of each round. He'd do the grab and hold, and then he'd, shoe shine, and when the ref would break him, he'd have a tendency to walk behind the referee. The ref would say break, and he'd walk behind him, and the ref would be turning around. Well, that'd give him an extra 20, 30 seconds, and over a period of 10, 12 rounds, that could add up to, 3 or 4 minutes worth of fighting. So I knew that he only liked to fight a minute or two each round, and my game plan was to go out there and just pressure him, and make him fight 3 minutes of every round, and, so he's going to tire out quicker than he normally would.
What's shoe shine?
Shoe shine's where you just, doing these little pity-pat uppercuts and stuff, and, it's just mainly for show for the referee, for the judges.
At what point in that fight did you knock the smile off his face?
I think it was about the second round, and and then about the fifth, sixth round, I could hear him wincing every time I hit him in the belly. So I knew those punches were affecting him, and there's no saying in boxing. You put in, you start going to the body, and you're basically putting money in the tank for the later rounds, because what you're doing in the first few rounds doesn't always show, but in the later rounds it does, because it starts to wear on him. And I knew that if I worked the body, that he was going to slow down in the later rounds, and it worked.
I think the fighter you most respected was Pernell Whitaker.
Oh yeah.
And he contributed to the book.
Yeah, he did an interview right before he got killed, and said that I was the strongest guy that he ever fought, and that he just didn't want to get hit by me, and that's why he was staying away. But out of all the guys that I fought, he's definitely the best one. Because southpaws are just really hard to fight. The jab doesn't usually work on him, and it's more right hands, left hooks, and you're trying to keep your left foot outside of his right foot. And so you're always stepping on each other's feet, and there's just a lot more that goes into fighting a southpaw, especially a good southpaw who's fast, and knows what he's doing.
When you see this book now, and you think people have already started to talk to you about possibly making it into a movie, can you give us any more information about that, and how excited would you be?
Oh, I'd be real excited. Yeah, it just really came out about, I don't know, I guess a month or two ago, and it's been sold out everywhere, that they're selling it at Barnes & Noble, Amazon's got it, and, a friend of mine said he got a copy of it at Walmart, and, so far everywhere it's had it, it's been sold out, so it seems to be selling good, and, if they make a movie out of it, that'd be even better, so, hopefully they'll be getting a hold of me soon, and I know it's got to be better than that movie Vinnie put out, and that, I guess they only had about 4 or 5 people that went and seen that show.
You can't leave that guy alone, can you?
No.
What about the Mickey Ward movie with Mark Wahlberg? Did you like that movie?
It was all right. I've never been a really Mickey Ward fan. We were trying to get to fight him back in the day, but they didn't want no part of it. But the fights he had with Gotti, there's some wars, but I was always under the impression that I'd be able to handle Mickey Ward because he was right in front of me. He was there to be hit, so those are the kind of guys I like to fight. Guys you don't have to look for, and you find them right in front of you. The one thing that Anthony didn't put in there, I forgot to tell him about, was Emanuel Steward bet $625,000 on Jimmy Paul when me and Paul fought. And that's why Emanuel's yelling at him in the later rounds, "You gotta go, man, you gotta move, you gotta do something, let your hands go." Well, he's, slowly seeing that $600,000 evaporate, and, and he wasn't too happy about it, so,
How did you find out about the bet?
Oh, one of the sports bookies down in Vegas, used to have some friends that worked at him, and he came up and told me, he goes, "Yeah, Emanuel Steward was just here and bet $625,000 on Jimmy Paul. And I go, oh, well, good. That's a losing bet. So, yeah, Emanuel wasn't real happy about it. And, you know, he came to my wedding because I got married a couple days after the fight, you know, and he came to the fight or the wedding and told me, he goes, you know, we didn't know who you were. We didn't have a mandatory defense for Jimmy. We could just pick any opponent out of the top 12 guys and, you know, fight them. And we picked you because we thought you were slow and easy to hit, but we found out that not be the case. So, yeah, he was real polite and real respectful, and you know, yeah. So when I used to see him after that, I go, yeah, isn't that too bad you lost that bet? Yeah, yeah. And he'd go, he'd start thinking about it, and he's, man, you know, thinking that $625,000 bet he lost, and he wasn't real happy about it.
Stewart's, man. He's one of the greatest. He's one of the most respected in the game.
Yeah, he was a good guy, and he had a big stable at the time. He had Tommy Hearns, Dwayne Thomas, Jimmy Paul, Hilmer Kenty. You know, he had some good fighters, and so yeah, Emanuel, you know, he turned out to be a really nice guy. You know, I got to know him pretty well.
Any thoughts on Mike Tyson getting back in the ring, or?
Don't do it. But, you know, the heavyweight division's so sad that I think that, you know, I think he could beat all those guys except for maybe Tyson Fury. That's the only one I think that, you know, might give him a problem. And, but, you know, he's talking about, you know, he smokes an ounce of weed every other day, and, you know, he can't be training like that. So, you know, I'm looking for him to get tired in about the second round. And
you think he'll come back and fight, though?
Have a joint break between rounds, and yeah, he's gonna go if they offer him enough money. You know, I think he'll do it.
Yeah.
And you know, it's gonna be tough to get him, you know, the commissions to license him. You know, because when you're that old, they make you go through a lot more testing, and you know, so. But you know, as sad as the heavyweight division is, I think he still has a shot. I watched some of his tape on the computer the other day, and I just went, "Wow, he looks good. He looked buffed, you know, the same Mike Tyson, boom, you know, real explosive." And so I think, you know, to do good in his comeback, and you know, because the heavyweight division is a sad situation right now. So I think he'll do good.
Was there a fighter that you idolized growing up? And getting into this, was there someone you like to watch fight?
Muhammad. You know, Muhammad Ali, you know, it's just so hard. He used to predict the rounds, he's going to knock these guys out. And, that, you know, if you've been in there and you fought before, you realize how hard that is to, you know, to predict something, you know. And he'd knock him out in that round that he was talking about. And it's just, you know, because knockouts usually don't happen, you know, they don't come to you. You got to make them happen, and you know, and it's just, you know, I mean, I think for like 6-7 fights in a row, he was predicting what round he knocked these guys out in, and he'd do it. So I just thought that to be incredibly tough. So, you know, that's why I never tried to, you know, predict what round I'm going to knock somebody out in, because it's, you know, you find yourself trying to take their head off with every shot, and then the next thing you know, you're losing the decision because the fight's over. So, you know, knockouts, they'll come to you, you know. If you wear guys down and break them down, and, you know, you have a game plan going in, and you stick to that game plan, and there's a good chance that you're going to, you know, win the fight.
Well, the book is called Tough Man, the Greg Haugen Story. It's a great story. Your life has been filled with ups and downs, and a lot of ups, and I'm really happy for you, man. I think the book is great, and I think that I'm really looking forward to the movie already.
Yeah, I hope so. You know, we'll see what happens. You know, that's Hollywood, and it takes time, but you know, I just know it's got to be better than that one Vinnie put out. You know,
what was wrong with the Vinnie one?
I don't know. I haven't watched it, but I heard it's pretty bad. You know, he doesn't have me in there, and how can you have a movie about Vinnie without, you know, showing me thumping him 3 times?
That's right, because you fought him 3 times.
Yeah, 40 rounds.
40 rounds.
Yeah, 2 15-rounders and a 10-rounder.
And
broke his
people,
nose.
refresh people how that went. How the three went. Because
Well,
I know you
the
beat
first
him.
one I beat him up and they gave it to him. That was in his hometown. We turned around and had a rematch in Atlantic City, and another 15-rounder, and I just beat him up even worse. And then we fought a few years later in a 10-rounder, and he just came out and ran like Carl Lewis. So he didn't want to be no part of it. He didn't want no part of me there, you know, because I broke his nose in the first 2 fights, and so I guess he went into the third fight saying, "Man, I don't want to get my nose screwed up again." So he won the first one, I won the second, and they gave him the third one. So yeah, so
he won the first, you won the second, and
they gave him the first one, and he didn't win it. You know, there was like 40 sports reporters in ringside, and 35 of them had me winning, and you know, a few that didn't. It was Providence News, and you know.
Hometown newspapers.
Yeah, so, you know, he knows I thumped him good, and, you know, he'll always know that.
Yeah. Well, listen, man, it's been great catching up, and best of luck with the book and the future, too. I hope we see you on the big screen.
Thanks, I hope so, too.